As you know, the topic for today's discussion is women in modern India. And luckily for us, we have amidst us 4 very interesting women from various fields. And in this discussion, we're going to talk about various aspects of being a woman in modern India, whether it's related to your career, your family, money, fitness and self-defense, or even starting your own business, and your personal relations, marriage being one of them. I always feel that any change that happens in society first originates in your mind. So it's very important to understand how the modern Indian woman thinks now on all these different topics. And that is something which I want to explore today here with you. I'm going to start with Shruti Kohli, who is an entrepreneur, has been a journalist. So Shruti, would you like to make your opening remarks and talk about the aspects of modern Indian women that you feel are fascinating?
Sure, I'd love to. And first of all, thanks everybody for coming over. And I'm very happy to see quite a few men around here. Because whenever we are talking about women's rights or women's emancipation, men tend to steer clear. Thanks so much for coming over. Well, I would like to talk about a very important aspect. Money, of course, is a very important aspect. And of course, my book also talks about the relationship of women with money. When we read the tagline of my book, it says money and the Indian woman. Everybody tends to think that, okay, it's going to be some gyan on investment and all. But I don't know how women are going to be different in investing in the same product which is there in the market. I talk about women's relationship with money as vis-a-vis their relationship, their other relationships. They are daughters, they are mothers, they're professionals, they're entrepreneurs. In various roles, their relationship with money is totally different. And what I see is, everybody says that, my grandmother, everybody, my mother, even my mother's generation, they are wonderful money managers. Of course, I agree. They were wonderful money managers. Give them the money and they'll show you what it means. Now, it's different. Women are earning. Where is the problem? That, we can't still call them financially independent. Why? Because even when they were, agreed that they were very good money managers, even now they are very good money managers. But even when in our grandmothers or mothers' generation, when they were handling the money very properly, they were not independent. When they had to buy something, the king was still the man. They had to go to the man and ask him that, okay, I want to buy that. Can I do it? Because, of course, he was the one who was earning. Mostly in that generation, women were housewives. They were not working. Even today, according to official figures, only 25.5% women in India are working. They are earning money.
Thanks, Shruti. I'd now like to invite Nandini, who's written a very interesting book on arranged marriage and marriage in general called Hisht, to make her opening remarks.
Thank you. I think I'm going to be a bit of an anomaly on this panel and probably elsewhere in the world, because I do come from a very privileged background, but I wouldn't call myself feminist in any sense. And I think I'm very comfortable with gender roles. And I think it's probably because of the sort of privileged upbringing that I've had. I've never felt inferior in any way. And I actually find that the world is a lot more convenient when you're a woman, When I wanted to quit my job so that I could work on my writing, no one asked me if I had a writing contract. No one asked me what I was going to do for money. I was free to sort of move back home and live with my parents. Whereas I'm sure that if either of my brothers had done the same, and they have the same parents and just as much or as little money as I do, I'm sure my family would have gone crazy, And I'm actually better educated than them. I have a master's degree and both of them have just finished their bachelor's. So if at all, there should have been some resentment against me, but that didn't happen. So there are some other points which I'd like to make with regard to arranged marriage and the perception of arranged marriage. A lot of people ask me whether I'm for it or against it. As far as I'm concerned, it's not a debate, It's a choice which everyone is free to make. And it also becomes a choice sometimes of whether you want to get married or not. Let's say you're 30 and you want to get married by around 32, 33 at the most. And you haven't met anyone, you haven't been lucky enough to meet somebody at a coffee shop or through your friends or on Twitter or whatever, whom you consider worthy of a relationship and marriage. So I don't think there's anything wrong with sort of looking at shadi.com or, looking for your family to fix you up with somebody. And when journalists interview me, they often ask, why do you think Indians are so regressive? Why do you think why do you think arranged marriages and institutions still exists? When do you think we'll become truly progressive? And I think it's problematic to link the way in which you meet your partner to progress. The sort of marriage you have is different. If you're in an abusive marriage, or if you're doing something you don't want to do because you got into that marriage, and if it's a regressive marriage, then that's different. But I'm drawing a distinction here between the marriage you have and the way in which you meet your partner. And I don't know if arranged marriages are that different from, let's say, dating websites or speed dating in the US or UK. Another thing which would come up a lot when I was doing my sort of round of launches was that women would come up to me and say, who'd had arranged marriages, and say, thank you for not judging us, because, you know, when you're intelligent and you have an arranged marriage, everyone treats you like you're an idiot. It's like, you know, you succumb to pressure and your family forced you. And sometimes, and very often in this urban westernized milieu that I'm focusing on for the book, it's women who've chosen to have those marriages. I saw a similar thing happen during Karwa Chauth on Twitter. I was making some wisecracks about how Tambrams never fast for anything. And then somebody said, oh, you're so right. I mean, it's so patriarchal, the system of Karwa Chauth, and such a silly superstition. Now I wonder, you know, if you are fasting, it doesn't mean you're an idiot. And it doesn't mean that you believe that the moon and your fasting and whatever has to do with your husband's longevity. It may just be this romantic little ritual that you like, you know, it's once a year, and it's like, you know, let's face it, it's about 15 hours. Sometimes when you're working in a newsroom, you don't have time to eat for 15 hours, so it's no big deal. And I find that often people like us who've dated before, and, you know, when you get into a marriage and you're not getting in with the express purpose of producing offspring, suddenly you have babies, and then you find that you're growing apart from your husband because you don't get any time together. And there are so few rituals which are just husband and wife. So this could be a sweet little thing which you like to do, and I don't think you should be made to feel like an idiot for doing that. So also this other thing is, people tend to associate arranged marriage with this demand for tall, fair, beautiful women. And I found a very interesting thing happened when some extracts from the book were published in Open magazine, and these were about horror stories, about the absolute freaks that women tend to meet in these circuits. And a lot of them were making fun of the men they met. And so there was this comment which said, so it's wrong for us to ask for tall, fair, beautiful women, but women make fun of short men, bald men, men who are not earning enough, and that's all okay. And that's when it hit me that, you know, women can be just as contemptuous of physical lack, just as demanding, but then we aren't seen as sexist, whereas a poor man who asks for a convent-educated girl is like, oh, so, you know, this is what you want. I think among the elite, it sort of turned on its head, this demand for a virgin bride, for instance. When a man who wants somebody who's a virgin is sort of seen as a freak in this particular society. So equally, I don't think just as it's wrong to be pressured into a marriage, I think it's also wrong to be made to feel guilty constantly. As long as you're making a choice to get married and get into an arranged marriage, I don't think you should be seen as someone who's not rebellious enough or not modern enough or someone who's succumbed to societal pressure. So I think the reason Meru Gokhale, my editor, sort of proposed this book was, it's a very interesting dynamic that there are so many arranged marriages in modern society and many of them are working well. I think they are working well not because the women are failing to rebel, but I think women, even if they don't know what they want, even if they don't know what they want, they know what they don't want. So I think we should give women who choose to have arranged marriages some credit for knowing what they want their lives to be. Thank you very much.
Moving on, I'd like to request Vesna to make her opening remarks. As you guys just heard, Vesna is a fitness expert. She's responsible for making many women as well as men look good and gorgeous. And her next book, her upcoming book, is on self-defense for women, which is also a very burning topic. So over to you, Vesna.
Hi, good afternoon all. Thank you for coming on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is a very, very burning topic, I think, for the last year, which deals with the sexual harassment, with women's rights, with our sense of freedom and security that we have about regarding ourselves and our body. And it took around a year to write this book, and a lot of time has been spent in talking and interviews, in research. And what struck me the most is that even though statistically speaking, India and we in India are not that far behind when it comes to sexual harassment cases, attempted rapes and completed rapes cases. We are not that far ahead or behind than anywhere else in the world, apart maybe South Africa, right? But the sense of freedom that we have when it comes to our way that we dress, when we walk on the street, what we do on the street is completely different. What we are going to do or feel free to do when we are in India or vis-a-vis we are in New York. Even statistically, we can get attacked as much over there as we do here. So that is one aspect. The other aspect is when it comes to sexual harassment, it kind of turns out that men and women are talking two completely different languages here. There is a huge disconnect as what men think is okay to do and liberties they give themselves and what we as women think that we should, or what is the boundary line. Now, this can be a very interesting discussion as we are all have been reading now at the workplace, sexual harassment at the workplace, women wearing makeup, wearing more cleavage to what they ought to. So sexualization on one side within the workplace area, and on the other side, the attitude of the men towards women when it comes to what remarks can they make or what is a joke, or even well-meaning men and well-educated men of certain age or above certain age seem to be having a quite interesting understanding what is on or not on, or where are those lines are crossing. So that is another very interesting, which I'm finding very interesting topic. And the third part is that when we say it's enough, what should we do to stop it? How physical should a woman can be? Because we have all grown up with that myth that we are a fairer sex, we are more gentle sex, and that we are not physically as able as men are. Okay? And there is another very common myth that if you're being assaulted, you should get quiet, hold it, hold on to it, do not do anything because he's going to hurt you more. And this is another, what I'm finding is that a sexual assault or a rape is much deeper subject than just dissatisfying sex. It's not about sex. It's about somebody violating your most inner space. And that is what, again, lots of men are not getting it. So, and again, statistically, this is far away from truth. That it's not that if you hold on to and you get quiet that you're going to get hurt less. It just means that for sure you're going to get assaulted. And if you fight, you should fight with all your might, with everything you have. You should play dirty. You should do to as far extent as you can by gouging his eyes, making him blind, making him deaf, killing him over there if you have to in order to defend your life. And this was another thing, because the moment I would talk to a man about woman turning aggressive in the prospect of her being assaulted, men would get uncomfortable. They would get seriously uncomfortable. You know, it would be like body language would go from here to turning on the side, kind of trying to protect themselves. And so that is a thing that we can debate on why it is happening, to which extent it is happening, and what to do to prevent it. And this is, in my mind, a 20 to 30 year long process that we can change a generation, okay? But what we can do right now is to equip ourselves with so much more knowledge in terms of improving our own sense of safety and security, and working on our skills so that if we find ourselves in this situation, that we can actually successfully, with forceful resistance, get out of that situation, using whatever comes into our hands, arms, or whatever arms we can produce at that point. So that would be on my part.
Thank you, Vesna. Next up is Apurva Purohit. She's the CEO of Radio City and one of the very few women CEOs in the media. There has been a lot of talk about media and what's happening with women in media lately. and being a working professional, independent working professional, and living a life of dignity and hard work right now in the world today. So in the context of all of this, I'd request Apurva to make her opening remarks.
Thank you, Milee. I think your specific question was, what is it about that is changing about the modern Indian woman, and what is it that you're finding fascinating about?
Yes, of course. You've worked so long in the media, and the general topic for today is women in modern India. And of course, I don't think a lot has changed drastically. I think there are little changes in the thought process, in how women are responding to things, how they are empowering themselves and asserting their rights. So, in the context of, all of this,
Sure.
I'd like you to...
Yeah. So I think the first thing that we must see over the last 20 years is that how much the woman has changed from her own perspective. Okay, there was a phase, and I'm talking specifically about the working woman, corporate woman. 20 years ago, women at the workplace was more of a CSR initiative. So organizations had women there just to show that tokenism that, yes, I have that one woman in the... Today, things have changed quite dramatically. And I think Indian women increasingly are wanting a successful marriage, successful home life, or successful personal life, and a successful career. Earlier, it used to be a choice. So either I can have one or the other. Today, she wants both. But how she's able to get both, she's finding it a bit of a challenge. And in that context, I find three things about the Indian woman very fascinating, about the Indian modern woman very fascinating, and I've written about it in the book too. And that's one thing that they have to contend with. And my message clearly to everybody is that, whatever you do, you will feel guilty. So don't think if you stay at home, you will not feel guilty about having wasted that potential and wasted all that education. So guilt is something, and it's so surprising that everybody feels that only they feel guilty. But the reality is that all of us who have worked, not worked, have felt guilty at any point. I still feel guilty about leaving my son 15 years ago when he had chicken pox at home, for example. I think the other thing that is really fascinating about the Indian woman is this whole, and that's the moniker I've used in the book, this whole suffering Sita mentality. So all of us grew up watching Hindi films where the heroine used to suffer. So she used to suffer because she had an evil father. She used to suffer because she had a rich boyfriend and she was poor, or she was rich and the boyfriend was poor, or she suffered because her children threw her out of the house, or she suffered because she was a vamp and the hero was very, loved the heroine and not her. So she was constantly suffering. And because we've seen this Nirupa Roy thing, we all believe that to be a good Indian woman is to suffer. So we like suffering. So when we go to work and then we go back home at 10 o'clock in the night, and our husbands will tell us, don't make khana, you will order outside. But we'll make hot chapati so that next morning we can say, how much I suffered, I made chapatis at 10 o'clock in the night. Because if we don't do that, how will we suffer? So we like suffering. And I think that's one thing that we need to get out of. There are lots better role models to aspire to than to be suffering Sita. But I think we've made that into a virtue. So that's really the second thing that I find very fascinating, that the more modern she's becoming, the more she's still wanting to live up to that ideal Indian, tragic, Mother India type of woman. The third thing I find very fascinating is women's roles have changed. So we were the nurturers and the guys were the hunters, right? Today we've also become hunters. We are nurturers and hunters. But I don't think we are getting that in our mind, because I see one strong aspect where women are failing, that, however successful they are, they do not want to celebrate their success. They don't want to come up and say, I did a great job. So I've been now married for close to 25 years. My husband's also a CEO of an organization. So one day he was just in the morning sitting, and he had this very loving look on his face. So I felt very happy by, after 25 years, your husband's looking at you lovingly, so you feel quite thrilled. So I said, so why are you looking at me like this? Husband I am. so that's, and so men find it so much easier. So when you talk to them and say, you say, okay, so as your organization is doing well, why do you think your organization is doing well? Oh, I thought of this great strategy, and then I told the investors, and then I got my team aligned to me, and I just cracked the market. And you ask a successful woman CEO the same question, so why do you think your organization is doing well? So an Oscar-fitting speech. Oh, I'd like to thank God, and I'd like to thank my team, and I'd like to thank my dog and my cat, and who supported me. Never will she say, I did well because of me. I did well because I have done something. Always she's attributing her success to other things. And that's the final message, or, that I want to give women, that today you have become a hunter too. Celebrate your success, celebrate your achievement. There is no harm standing up and saying, I did this because of what happened to me, or or because of my talent and my potential. So this whole paradox is what I find fascinating.
Thank you so much, Apurva. I think it was quite interesting, and I think we could all relate with it very well. I'd now like to throw a question to you, Shruti. The importance of saving and spending, managing budgets, and what is your take? What tips would you like to give women?
See, when it comes to, actually, like I said, that my book is actually not talking about investing and financial planning. But yes, it's the attitude of women and people towards money that I'm talking about, especially women, of course. It's as early as possible. And the chapters in the book are like on relationships, roles a woman plays, mother, daughter. So in the mother chapter, I've said that, children, as soon as they reach around 7 or 6 years, you should start telling them you should start giving them pocket money. And that's the first thing that, teaches them the importance of money. And don't give them pocket money for standing first in the class or getting a trophy or something. Just give it to them for learning well. Even for women, women are told that, even when they are children, girls are told that someday, you are going to be dependent on a man. Today, you're dependent on your father or your mother for money. Tomorrow, when you grow up, you're going to be married. So it's going to be finally your husband. When I was starting when I started my career, everybody said that, why are you slogging so much? What's the need? Just get anything, any job that you're getting, just settle down and get a good job, because that's how you'll be judged when you're getting married. Okay, so your CV, your matrimonial biodata, it should look very, very cool, so there should be a brand attached to your name and all that. So when I started my company, this was 3 years back, I had my own family, my uncles and all telling me that, what's the need of slogging so much? Again, the same thing, what's the need of slogging so much? Finally, just give up all this and get back to working. Get a cool like a lakh or something per month, and finally you're going to be married, and nobody is going to even ask how much you're earning. So what's the point? You are going to be judged by the money that your husband is earning. So your salary is going to be secondary. Whatever you are doing is secondary. These people who are telling me this, they have their children settled in the US. I mean, I'm just trying to say that they have connections with the Western world, and they know how that world functions. Still, they were telling me all this. When I go out to get business for my company, I talk to the big shots in the corporate houses. And one of my big businesses is corporate training also. When I'm talking to them, they tell me that, okay, I'll give you business, but what is the guarantee that it's going to be long term? Tomorrow you might be married, you might shift to the US, you might shift to any country. So what's the guarantee that, whatever I'm investing in your company is going to, what is the ROI, return on investment? I am very skeptical. So this is what, I have faced these things, like at every big decision that I've taken. That's also because I was also under the impression that, maybe finally I don't need to save so much, I don't need to invest so much, because one day, there will be some guy who'll be there, who'll take care of all my needs and all. I've seen my friends, oh God, they've got married, they have rich husbands, some of them I'm talking about, and the life is so cool. I mean, they don't have to do anything. There's a friend of mine who shifted to the US. She just gets up in the morning, looks after the children. She's so happy with the children, clicks pictures of her children, sends them WhatsApps to me, she puts it up on Facebook, and everybody, wow, you have such cute children. I said, life is so cool. I said, even if you live that kind of a life or my kind of a life will go on. So why not just settle down and have children and, be happy, click the pictures and all. But see, and there's one point, which Nandini made. It's very easy to be a woman. That even if, when you're having children and you want to leave your job and you want to be at home and look after them, and nobody's going to be like, oh, you're leaving your job. And if a man is doing that, then how are you going to earn? How are you going to provide? And that's because, of course, we are living, men are living under the provider burden. And women are brought up in that dependent mold, technically. So that's happening because of that. Now, the problem will never be when the woman says that, okay, I want to leave the job and be at home. The problem will be when she says that after 2 days of having a child, she wants to go back to work. The problem will be there. The problem is when all the problems that are happening in this world because of women, as we say, although it's because of the mentality of men, is because women want to do what they are not expected to do. So the problem lies there. It's very
Shruti,
nice.
Don't you think it's slightly changing now? I think when you have a good support system, and if your spouse and your company where you work, they're supportive and they encourage you to continue to work, I think there are ways that women can still continue to work. I feel the way I see things happening around with my friends, I feel that's slightly changing. That's an option. I mean, if you don't want to work, you want to take a break and spend more time with your child, and you feel at that point in your life that is your priority.
Yeah.
But I also feel that there's an option of working too, if you want to, and if you have support from people around you. Of course,
so the support will be either your mom shifts in with you or your mother-in-law is there in the house.
It's part of the support, yes. I think we're lucky in India to have that at times.
Or you have a maid.
Help.
Or you have a nanny or a maid at home. So the support comes from there. So
yes, what I'm trying to say is that they have options now. I think women do have options. And it depends on what you choose. If you really enjoy your work.
The burden lies on the woman. The burden lies on the woman to choose that, okay, I want this.
Yeah.
And, okay, but, still it's not largely, yes, the change is happening.
Yeah.
Of course it's happening. That's why you see more women coming out and working, and they continue to work. Yeah. Okay. But, yes, it's slow and it's just started. Yeah. We are in a transition which has just started happening. Yeah. And we are slowly moving towards it.
I'd like to bring in Nandini here. Nandini, you talked about Karwa Chauth, in your opening remarks, and how women do it, and it's a very romantic gesture. But, in India, most fasts, as we know, are done mainly by women. I can't think of a fast specifically for men. So it's a very nice gesture, but don't you think it's good if both do it, like both husband and wife, men and women do it together and make it even more romantic?
Well, I mean, I think, again, I'm the anomaly because my father's the only one who fasts at home. Every Ekadashi, he fasts. My mom and, my brothers, my mom, everyone eats. So, Yeah, but no, I think this is the other question which comes up, it's like, oh, so are you alone fasting or is your husband fasting with you? I think sometimes it's okay. The same thing if a woman wants to take on her husband's surname. It's like, okay, so now what, you belong to him but he doesn't belong to you. Is he taking on your surname? So I think at some point you have to give women credit to make the choices they want to.
Yes, and men too, like if they want to. Like I think some of them are starting to. I see that happening on TV, during Karwa Chauth. A lot of them do it as couples together. So that is, I think, a change that I see with men being, wanting to do it on their own for their wives and the longevity of their wives.
Yeah.
But I have another question for you. For your book, Hijed, you have researched a lot. You came across really fascinating stories. So would you like to relate to all of us one of the stories that still stuck with you about arranged marriages in India?
Yeah, but before that, I wanted to speak about something which Apurva said, this guilt that women feel when, because one of my friends who's actually been featured in this book went through that. She had a baby roundabout when I I think I've interviewed her like 2 months after the baby was born. Next month she went back to work and she hated it. And she said, every moment I'm thinking of my baby and I don't want to be here. So I said, then why are you here? And she said, because I feel so guilty, my degree is being wasted. So that's another thing that women deal with. One of the stories which a lot of people have told me about it, which struck me, was a friend of mine. She moved to, she and her husband were working in Delhi, and then her husband was posted in Guwahati, so she moved back. She's a journalist, and she wasn't able to find a job in Guwahati which suited her. So she said, okay, I want to move back to Delhi. And her husband couldn't get a job in Delhi at the same position. So he said, it's going to take me a while, so why don't you go ahead and shift and, take the kids with you. I'll come and visit you every 2 weeks. And I think that is, so I think men are changing as well. It's not like, okay, so you will move where I move. He's okay with looking for a job where she wants to go. He's okay with living away from her while she sort of goes after her profession too.
My girlfriend recently had this self-defense workshop in our office. She came back as an excited kid. And she wanted to show what she's learned. And I found it cute, volunteered. I couldn't walk straight for the next 3 days. So, and then the next day, when she came back from office, I asked her, so what new did you learn? I was scared, but I still asked. And she said that she skipped it. And I asked her why. She said, we saw this short movie by Anurag Kashyap, and we thought, it's more about mental strength than being trained. I went to YouTube, saw it. I found the short film very stupid, and I was very angry at that. I thought that a lot of these, suddenly you have these spurt of opinions where people come and talk about it, and they end up giving the wrong message. What's wrong with that video, I felt, was that, they are being said that, you don't need to be trained to tackle these situations, which I felt was not the right way to go about it. One needs to be trained and all, and there were other issues with the video. So what do you think of the sudden spurt in opinions? That is the first question. I would like you to answer that. And second is that, I have so many, female friends who would come back and bitch about their bosses, and, and they would be, and I would ask them, so why? And, they would say, oh, she is such a bad boss. I think it could be because, she's in her 30s and not married. So she must be frustrated. And I would find it very, they would be talking about their senior editor or someone. And I would find it very odd because I've never had a man, a male friend of mine coming back and saying that. And, so these, kids new in the profession, they would judge their seniors who would be there in their mid-30s, unmarried because they don't want to be married. And they were like, yeah, she must be frustrated, so, she doesn't get it. So, I'm like, so don't you think that it's also about how women judge other women? Mother-in-laws want their daughter-in-laws to be teachers because they would be back by 2 o'clock, and it happens even now.
Vesna, would you like to take the first question?
Yes. The first thing, my husband has a similar experience. He was my guinea pig for all grips, and so he volunteered, and then he was also my attacker in the book, and ended up with bruises and blood oozing. So I feel your pain. Actually, he feels your pain more, I think. Okay, it is truth, and it is truth. You see, there is no one truth. The first rule of self-defense, it starts in your mind. That is the number one. It comes with your attitude. Okay? So, for instance, if somebody attacks me and puts their hands on my breast, I can react in 2 ways. I can say, oh my God, somebody has his hands on me. And I'm paralyzed, I'm shocked, I'm freaked, I'm everything. Or I can say, okay, now, I know exactly where your arms are, and I know where my knee is going to go next. Okay, so this is a very simple thing. So, and you see how from a victim, I have gone into a fighter. Okay, I still don't know how it's going to end. There's still no guarantees there. So that is a whole different ball game. But the thing is that my attitude is the one that's going to determine how the same story may possibly end. Either in freezing or with me putting up the fight. So it is truth that it starts in your mind. Now, this is where the training comes into place. If I know what are your soft targets and that I can, however, if you're that much stronger, that means that probably physically fighting you is not going to end up well for me because of the sheer physics. Okay? You can live this much, I can live that much. Having said that, your eyes are sensitive, your throat is sensitive, your groin is sensitive, your knees are sensitive, your shins are sensitive. So I already have 5 different things there that I can successfully attack no matter what is your size and what is my size. So that automatically leverage it. Now, in addition to that, if I know a few grips that I can not only harm you, but I can successfully knock you out, because again, if I just harm you and create you a little bit pain, I still need few more seconds to run away. Okay, because we are doing this all to get out of there. Not necessarily that you now get there and beat the crap out of him, which is an option as well.
Take the second part of his question. Why women sort of target other women or feel that if a woman is not married in her 30s, she's bound to be unhappy and, always in a bad mood or, just, more likely to be tougher on you.
Yeah, when I spoke earlier about how easy it is to sort of speak against men and how easy it is to declare them chauvinists, I think the other thing that we do is we often don't recognize that women themselves can be chauvinists, and there are so many women who say, okay, so I brought up my kids. Now, if my kids want to work, I'm not going to go through that again with their children. Now, the fact is when you become a parent, it is a lifelong commitment. And as long as your life ends and as long as your child's life ends, So, I'm sure Apurva couldn't have become a CEO without help, without support from men and women in her family. And very often it's, people say, okay, my husband takes care of the child when I'm not there. But, when you have a mother who's not working, a mother-in-law who's not working, someone who's not, a sister-in-law who's not working, and they sort of shrug it off and say, okay, I have my own work to do. I think women can sort of undo each other as well, as much as men do, sometimes more than men do. And the comment that Sanu made, when you say, she's not getting any, so she's in a bad mood all day. That's the kind of thing which women say all the time. And while a man would be lynched for saying that, women get away with saying a lot of things. So I think that's something which needs to change. A woman in her 30s who's either not had the time to get married or hasn't found the right guy or whatever, doesn't mean that she's going to be a bitch just because she's not married. And I don't hear this about men either, men who are not married or men who have unhappy marriages. No one says, oh, it's because of that he's taking it out or whatever. So I think that's something that really does have to change. And
Not really, because I used to be a basketballer and we had a coach who had a girlfriend. Trust me, we knew exactly when he had a fight with her. Because he would work our butt off, so we do that as well. We knew exactly, and there is something to it, something goes wrong in your personal life, you take it on your employees or your trainees or your students, so it happens both ways.
I agree with that. My point was that they don't point it out when it comes to men. I'm sure there weren't people who said,
we felt it.
When arrogance comes to the house, towards her husband and towards her mother-in-law and everyone, so what the way to deal with that?
Well, I think arrogance is arrogance, whether it is with men or women.
Because
so it's not
of
a
the
good
job,
thing. It's not a good
because
thing.
of the job only. But she's earning more than her husband.
Yeah.
So that arrogance comes automatically.
Well, I don't think it's always the case. Most of the time men earn more than women. We don't call it arrogance. I think we accept it. We're very happy if men are, husbands or boyfriends are earning a lot more.
I think arrogance, let us not assume automatically it will come, whether if she's earning more or not. Arrogance is a function of how you are as a human being, whatever you do. I think the only learning for all married couples that I would leave is that you have to think about yourself as a family incorporated. It is a joint unit. How do you run a company where there are equal partners, where the functions, a marketing function, HR function, programming function, it has to run equally, right? Like that, if you think of your family as a unit, and every time you enter the house and you leave your chappals at the doorstep, if you leave your egos there, I think you will have a happy
Because
marriage.
if both are working, I mean, one will earn more than the other. It can be the man or the woman. I don't think their salaries can be exactly the same. So, you should leave your ego, like Apurva rightly said, outside. And, don't bring money a lot in terms of relationships. It's very important, but,
I'm
I
sure
think
Shruti will
other
disagree
things-
because I've read her book.
Thank you, all of you, for being
Thank you.
here, for listening to us and participating in this discussion. Thank you.